As I'm sitting here today, it is November the 17th, 2019. And outside, well, we've got a little bit of snow falling. It's not really sticking, but it's definitely cold enough outside to snow. So I am hunkered down inside for today, trying to figure out what I can do over the course of the winter to keep myself entertained. And I think that what I'm going to do is play a little game of motorcycle Mythbusters. So over the course of this winter, I'm going to take some topics that are a little bit controversial in the motorcycle world, and we'll talk about them one by one and see if we can get to the bottom of them. So the topic for today is going to be, are young people priced out of the motorcycle market? And the reason I'm covering this is because right now on my Facebook page there is an ongoing discussion about the new Indian Challenger and the price of that motorcycle. In particular, there was an article in Motley Fool on their website that talked about how Polaris is now seems to be following in the footsteps of Harley-Davidson and continuing to cater to this older demographic, the demographic that I belong to, and they do not seem to be creating any products to try to engage younger riders. So given that, I thought this would be a good topic to tackle. Have young people really been priced out of the motorcycle market? In order to solve this problem, the first thing we need to do is to find a good inflation calculator. And I went to usinflationcalculator.com. I mean, where else would you go to find an inflation calculator? And I looked at the rationale on how they calculate the rate of inflation, and it seems to be a good, valid way to do it, and that is they look at the consumer price index from the years that you want to compare, and then they run a calculation in order to figure out what the true value would be in today's dollar. For example, I'm going to use 1980 because that is the year I bought my first motorcycle, and we're going to look at the price of my first motorcycle and see what it would be in today's dollars. So if you want to see that calculation method, well, here it is. So back in 1980, I was 19 years old and I got my first motorcycle, which was a Kawasaki KZ440C. That is, it was the standard version, not the LTD, you know, the kind of little, you know, custom cruiser looking bike. This was just the standard version. And I paid about $1,550 for it before taxes and things. So plugging all of those values into the inflation calculator, that is the starting year of 1980, the value of $1,550, and then ending year of 2019, the equivalent 2019 price would be $4,840.85. So now that we know the equivalent dollar value in 2019, what we have to do is see if there are bikes, equivalent motorcycles, that could be purchased today for around that $4,800, $5,000 range. So I went out and I got on the old interwebs, did a little Googling, and I found the following motorcycles in the same kind of price range and again, roughly the same CC. Some are a little more, some a little less. Right? So here you go. We have the Honda CB300F for $43.49. We have the Honda CB300R for $49.49. The Honda CRF 250L for $51.99. The KTM 390 Duke for $54.99. We have the Kawasaki Ninja 400 for $52.99, and that's the ABS model. And we have the Kawasaki Z400 for $49.99, again, the ABS model. All of these motorcycles I just went through are within $600 of the same price that my KZ440 was back in 1980. And even though some of them are 300cc motorcycles, you are still getting a lot more motorcycle in today's money, right, than you were back then with that KZ440. Well, okay, that may be true for a $1,500 motorcycle, but is it true for a Harley Davidson, right? Can somebody still buy a Harley Davidson for relatively same price as they could back in 1980? And the answer to that is yes. A Harley Davidson touring bike cost about $10,000, maybe up to $12,000 back in 1980. Way out of my price range for a 19-year-old back then. If you plug that into the calculator, well, you come out with a price of over $31,000 in today's money, right? Which is about what they cost. Okay, so I think that part of the myth is definitely busted, right? There are motorcycles today that are just as affordable as they were back in 1980. So now what we need to do is we need to look at wages, right? Have wages kept up with inflation? So back in 1980 when I got this bike, I was making about $7 an hour working in construction. Right, if I plug that into the calculator, then that is worth, well, just under $22 an hour in today's money. Now, if you Google around a little bit, you are going to find that wages have indeed kept up with inflation over the course of that 40-year time period. There are some economists who bemoan that fact, and they think that wages should have gone up more so that people in today's world would have more purchasing power than back in 1980, for our example. I guess the one problem with looking at it that way is that that isn't really how the world works, right? And that's not what happened for me, right? For me, I made $7 an hour working in construction. But when I got tired of doing that, I started educating myself and I moved jobs to where I could make a higher income, right? And I've done that over the course of time. And I think that's what most people do, right? If you stay in the same job and don't take on any more responsibility, right, and don't really ever make yourself needed, right, in that position, right, well, then you probably are just going to get increases that keep up with inflation. But if you go out and improve yourself, improve your skills, make yourself valuable, right, then your income is going to steadily climb and your purchasing power is going to be greater over time. Now, there are, of course, some things that have gone up greater than the rate of inflation. And some of them have gone up substantially over the rate of inflation. And those things would include housing prices, the price of education, and taxes. So does the price of those big things, do they price young people out of the motorcycle market? I don't know. I know a lot of people, I'm sure that you do too, in that 25 to 35-year-old bracket. And from what I see, they're not just sitting around doing nothing. They're finding ways to do the things that they want to do. It is simply that motorcycling isn't necessarily one of them. So that brings me to what I think is the real reason that young people aren't as interested in motorcycling as we were. And that is because, well, they just don't care, right? They have many, many other things that they can do to entertain themselves and get involved with in life than we did. When I was 19, there were no cell phones, there were no video games. I know I'm making myself sound ancient, and I guess I am, but the world has changed dramatically since 1980 when I got that first motorcycle. There is just so much more to do. Right? And the culture that was created around motorcycling, especially here in the United States, is just not one that is very attractive to young people anymore. So I'm not a marketing expert or a demographics expert. I just am an observer of society just like everybody else is. But I think that if we continue as motorcyclists and as a motorcycle industry thinking that the answer to getting young people involved with motorcycling is about creating the right kind of bike, right, or getting it in at the right price point, well, that's just doomed to failure, right? There are already bikes out there that a young person can afford, right, that will do the job if they are really interested in getting involved in motorcycling. Right? So to solve this problem, the manufacturers or the motorcycling community needs to find a way to make motorcycling more attractive to the younger demographic. Right? The manufacturer who comes up with that "you meet the nicest people on a Honda" ad campaign, well, they're going to be successful. And the ones that continue to present this "I'm a badass" marketing approach, well, again, I think those are ultimately doomed to failure once we old guys really do die off and get out of the market. The only company that I've seen that is doing that pretty well seems to be Ducati with their Scrambler ad campaigns and their World of Joy that they have created. They are creating kind of a little culture around the Scrambler motorcycle that is about having fun, having great experiences with your friends, and from what I see, that seems to be working pretty well for them. But no other manufacturer has figured that out yet. So until they do, again, in my opinion, they're not going to attract younger people into motorcycling, no matter what kind of bike it is or what the price is. Alright gang, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you want to support this channel, please check the description of this video for a bunch of ways that you can do that. And if you have any topics that you would like me to talk about in this motorcycle Mythbuster theme over the course of this winter, please put it down in the comments and we'll see what we can do about it. So thanks guys. I hope you make it through winter. I am really trying hard.